So, even as we've been asked to pray for debt and cattle rustling and to keep on thanking God over and over and over again when you are blessed, hopefully you are blessed as we open up today. But then there are things that you can't pray for. Number one, you can't pray for your money to multiply. Unless then the bishops would say something different, because we've seen some of them come in and say you can pray for your money to multiply. But then I would like to see any financial analyst who will come in and tell us the kind of special prayers that would do for money to multiply. Number two, you can't pray away debt. It will be interesting also to see how Ruto will come and also tell us what kind of national prayers we're going to do so that our debt in this country goes down. But then there are things that you can pray for. You can pray for government-run institutions to start understanding what makes them proper institutions. Number one, NSSF. And I do know that we're going to cover that, but then let's probably pray that what they're paying now is probably going to be what they will stick to for the entirety that fund is run as a scheme. Because today, we start with Lookupbusiness. Well, I'm telling you that if you look at the earnings for NSSF all the way to June 2021, they were paying 10% return. Now, any financial expert will tell you you just need around anything that is above inflation. Right now, we're talking about 8.5 thereof. So that's 1.5% above inflation. So you're making good money. Indeed, it's healthy. Because anything that promises you now 10 to 12%, that is a good investment. But then we've seen so much noise around NSSF. Now let me take you back to what Ruto said yesterday. In fact, if you start saving today, it's promised, and I do not know the modalities of that, he said that it's gonna get you back your money on that percentage that you're saving. So if the return is 1.5, then you're promising 3%, because it's saying, well, we are going to give you back an equivalent of your savings. Really good. But then the courts do not want that, because last week the court said, well, NSSF unconstitutional. The law gives you a leeway to choose where you want to put your money. It is not mandatory. So the national houses really do have a task just to make it legal. Call it the courts versus the members of parliament. Amoy just talked about that. Here, we're talking about business. My name is Simba Kiage at Lookuptv across all your social media platforms. Let's get started, shan't we? The National Social Security Fund, NSSF, has recorded a 9-year high record on interests on savings. Now, the pension scheme paid a 10% interest in the financial year ending June last year from 7% recorded a year earlier. This is a 237% increase in investment income to 32.2 billion shillings. This is the highest return since 2014 when it paid 12.5%. The NSSF put 152.9 billion shillings in government bonds, up from 124.2 billion shillings last year, while the value of quoted securities jumped from 52.5 billion shillings to 66.6 billion shillings. Now, the 10% interest means that the NSSF returns managed to beat the average inflation of 5.34% at the time. The NSSF's monthly contributions stand at 400 shillings, including 200 shillings from employers and an average of less than 250,000 that the fund pays when a member retires. Now, this comes amid a debate on whether the workers' monthly contributions are inadequate to offer retirees a decent living. Now, this comes after President William Ruto called for review of the monthly contributions to NSSF, saying they intends on adjusting employee payments for the current 200 shillings per month so that it matches with how much one earns as opposed to a standard fee. Now, Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and the Dentist Union, KMPDU, and other trade unions have vowed to push for disbursement of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, SRC, from office. Now, the union leaders stated that SRC has not been involving stakeholders in decision-making. Shadrach Kareria with more.
The move by the SRC to slash allowances from different public servants have engendered an outcry from the dogma of the trade unionist.
Solidarity forever, for the union makes us strong.
Sunday earmarked a outcry as the leadership of Kenya Medical Practitioners and other trade unions launched an arsenal against Menjik-led commission over the allowances slash, vowing to go to workers across the country to collect 1 million signatures to kick out the SRC in its entirety.
Kisema sisi tunarudi kwa members wetu kufanya yale yanatakikana ya kucorrect signatures kutoka leo. Aturudi nyuma. Kutoka leo tuna wajibu ya correct signatures. Parliament ikifunguliwa Alhamisi, petition yetu tuko tayari kuifanya.
SRC must go.
Union leaders argue that SRC has been making its decisions without seeking their opinions.
We disagree with the overarching role it has abrogated itself of issuing binding advisories without workers' input through their unions.
The unions claim that the move by the SRC to remove allowances was a violation of workers' rights.
The Commission has turned into a body that is neither answerable nor accountable to anyone and makes decisions without public nor stakeholder participation, contrary to the Constitution of Kenya. Article 231, Section 4. Wao wanapofanya kazi yao kulingana na mujibu wa katiba ya Kenya, wanafanya kupita kiasi. Kwetu sisi kama wafanyikazi wa umma, SRC kazi yao ni kushawishi peke yake.
Their complaints against the SRC have been backed by the Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers, KUPPET, Chairperson Mboka Milemba, stating that the union will be heading to court to invoke what he terms as the injustices done to teachers.
Tumeanza mipango ya kupeleka SRC kotini na pia kuongea na serikali ili walimu waweze kuongezwa mishahara. Walimu hawana mshahara wa kutosha. Nyumba ama bei ya nyumba ni juu sana, ni ghali kuliko ile pesa ambayo tunapeana kama house allowance. Kwa hivyo lazima tuongeze pia house allowance ya walimu.
The unions have stated that they will not slow down until their plea is heard and acted upon appropriately. Shadrach Kareria, Lookuptv.
Nandi legislators are now demanding to have the scrapped CDF back. Women Representative Cynthia Muge and a Member of Parliament Mgwen constituency, Joseph Lemlengit, have said that the fund has helped uplift the social welfare of majority of residents, which will negatively impact their livelihoods if cancelled.
We want to ask the people who are trying to say that CDF is unconstitutional, that they are trying to say that the services that the people of Kenya, the people of Nandi, the people of this country do not deserve services that is cool building, and also bursaries. We want them to consider it. Forget about the patrons of CDF. Look at the people of Kenya. Look at the real beneficiaries of CDF. Let us continue and allow people to get services from their government. This is our government, and we deserve all the things that this government has to offer for us. So kwa hiyo mambo ya CDF, mimi nasimama na wajumbe. Mimi ni wangavu, lakini nasimama na wajumbe kwa mambo ya CDF, kwa sababu ule mwenye atapata CDF ni mtu wangu, mimi ni mama county wake.
Juzi tumesikia kwamba waziri wa fedha anaongelea akisema hata discuss CDF. Lakini mwanzoni hapo tulisikia deputy president na president wetu William Samoei Ruto akisema ya kwamba kutakuwa na CDF. In fact, inafaa iongezwe ili iweze kusaidia watu wengine huko nyumbani. Namna gani? Sisi wote tunajua CDF inafanya kazi kubwa sana, si ndio? Katika kulipa karo ya shule, ujenzi wa shule. So kwa hivyo wabunge wote tumesikizana ya kwamba lazima CDF ikue ili tusaidie wanyonge katika kijiji. So tusikuwe na wasiwasi. Hiyo shida nyingine ambayo itakuwa, tutaenda pale bungeni alafu tutatatua hiyo shida. Sawa sawa.
Soy ke sojini Nandi ninyo age sojini Kenya ninyo.
All right. Now, what we do know is that the Nairobi International Trade Fair, and to be very specific, the Agricultural Trade Show, by the way. It's going on today. This when it officially kicks off in Nairobi. It's going to run for entirely what is like 6 days from today, 26 September, to 2nd October. Is at the Jamhuri Park. And we do have our reporter, Ian Kitani, live from the grounds. Ian Kitani, could you please give us an update of exactly what we do expect? And I do promise that we're going to bring him in the second part of the show right here on Lookupbusiness, so that then we can have conversations on the ground and walk around and see exactly what is going on. Ian Kitani, take over.
For the Nairobi International Trade Fair, the 2022 edition. And of course, we do have a lot of things to expect from this place. We do expect that the Chief Administrative Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries, that is Madam Anne Nyaga, will be gracing this event, of course, representing the Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture, that is Peter Munya. And of course, she'll be received by the Chairman of the ASK Nairobi branch, that is Joseph Mugo. And of course, we'll also be speaking to him later on in this particular show. The Chief Steward of the Nairobi branch as well, Mr. Levi Mukwesu, will be here. So as you can see just behind me, the place is not full of activity. And of course, this is the first day, Monday the 26th. And we do expect people have started streaming in to the place. But there's no much activity at the moment. And there are various companies here. There are manufacturing industries. There are institutions, there are water companies in this place. So a lot is expected, and as time goes by, we understand that we can also see that people have started streaming in at this particular place. We can see the various companies and stands in this particular place. So we do expect a lot, and just to give you a preview of the entire week, on today, Monday, the 26th of September, it is the business day. And of course, tomorrow, Tuesday, that is when we do expect the Governor of Nairobi County, His Excellency Arthur Johnson Sakaja, to be gracing the event. And of course, the official opening will be on Thursday, and that will be graced, or rather, the trade fair will be officially opened by His Excellency, the President, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, and he will be here. We of course will be bringing you all that as days go by, or as the days go by. On Thursday we also will be having the members and Life Governors Day, that is on Thursday. And on Friday, of course, the school parties and parents will be here before we see the Deputy President, who also be expected to be here on Friday. Now the 1st and the 2nd of October will be the family days. So we do expect a lot of activities here. We will be talking to various people in this particular place, and we will be linking you up with various board members, and the chairman specifically of the SK Nairobi branch will be talking to us to take us through what will be happening in this particular place, to give us finer details of what will be going on. And of course, the Chief Steward of the Nairobi branch, like I've said, Mr. Levi Mukwesu, will also be talking to us in this particular about this particular event, beg your pardon. And of course, we've seen various institutions, like I've mentioned, also here to, you know, at least showcase what they have in place. And of course, Simba, as things, you know, continue unfolding, we will be giving you finer details and what is going on in this particular place. But as for now, like I've told you and our viewers, we will be expecting the governor tomorrow, that is Arthur Johnson Sakaja, and of course the president, His Excellency Dr. William Ruto, to be here on Wednesday to officially open the event. So Simba, for now, we'll you know, be coming back. You can see people have started, you know, streaming in slowly, and of course we'll be giving you finer details as time goes by. Back to you, Simba.
All right, thank you very much, Ian Keitani. We do promise that we shall be joining you in the second part of the show, especially when we'll be talking to the chairman, the Nairobi branch, that is Mkwesi, if I did get you right, as well. All right, let's move on then with our news here, where Nakuru scrap metal dealers have promised to help President Ruto's administration in weeding out rogue traders in the industry. Speaking in Nakuru County, the traders have called on the government to help streamline the industry by making it easy to get licenses and asked for a hand in formalizing the business in the country. Immediate former President Uhuru Kenyatta's government stopped the business in the country last year after many illicit traders saw to the increase in vandalism in the country.
We are ready to support the government na kufanya kazi na serikali na ku make sure mambo ya vandalism na mambo ya kusaidia nchi, tutafanya hiyo kazi na tutajaribu tuwezavyo. Right now tumeweka zones managers, wale ambao watakuwa wanaangalia stores zile, atakuwa ni manager wa zile stores ziko area yake. Kama ni mtu anafanya kazi baya, tutakuwa tunamkabidhi kwa serikali, tunasema huyu ndiye anafanya kazi baya.
Na hatungetaka ya kwamba tukue ndio sisi tutakuwa tunaharibu mambo ya miundo msingi, vitu za wananchi. Tukue watu ya kwamba tutakuwa tunachunga zile vitu, zile chuma ambazo zimekuwa zikiibiwa, ikuwe hakuna Nakuru, ikuwe kila kitu iko sawa. Kwa sababu hii 2015 Act kuna mambo ambayo ilipitishwa in that 2015 ya kwamba ukiiba chuma ya serikali kuna zile fines. Ukipatikana na unafanya biashara bila license, kuna fines. So mtu yote mwenye atapatikana atapewa msalaba wake kibinafsi, sio kama chama. So Kenya tutakubali ni ya kwamba mtu mmoja anafanya makosa, anabebesha kama ni Nakuru County yote shida ambayo ni yake peke yake.
So tumeshikilia kwamba tutafanya kazi ambayo ni safi, tutachunga mali ya serikali na pia na mali ya umma. Mambo ya license watu angalilie, watupunguzie bei ya license, ndio kila mtu ambaye anafanya kazi ya scrap aweze kulipa.
Some millers in Nakuru have called on the government to lift the ban on moratoriums on logging in a bid to spur an economic revival in the sector. The multi-billion shilling sector had collapsed after the government imposed a moratorium in 2018, blocking millers from harvesting trees from government forests. Speaking in Nakuru while welcoming the move by the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, on reverting to the shamba system, Timber Manufacturers Association Treasurer Zakayo Maina says that the move will boost food production in the country.
Shamba system. Sasa simeona hii miti tumepanda mwezi ya 5. Hii miti ukikuja hapa miti ukipanda pahali umelima iko na manufaa kubwa sana, kwa sababu miti ukipanda pahali iko nyasi ama kichaka, miti haitakuwa manufaa kubwa, kwa sababu hii miti itakuwa bila kweke hata kidogo, na hii miti inakuwa kwa njia ya haraka sana, na inasaidia mimi na inasaidia kwa njia ile nyingine yoyote. Iko na environment kubwa sana, kwa sababu we give out what we call the carbon credit. Shamba system hii itasaidia mwananchi yule wa chini sana, kwa sababu atapata chakula, atapata kitu kingine, pesa atakuwa na pesa mfukoni, atakuwa tajiri mwingine, na hiyo pesa hagakuwa na hii tu. Tukipata namna hiyo na tuwe na miti kwa njia hii, atapata kuni na maneno ya kwenda kununua gasi hata nunua. Na kama forest itafanywa hii iendelee na njia hii, tutakuwa na miti ambayo tutakuwa na nyingi itatosheleza hii nchi yetu, na hatutaenda katika nchi ya Tanzania, hatutaenda Uganda kwenda kuleta miti ili kuji isaidia katika kazi ya ujenzi, na itaendeleza nchi yetu na nchi yetu ikuwe tajiri.
Mombasa youth have been taken through proper training that looks to impart them with knowledge on how to properly invest in the commodities and financial markets. The organization behind the training, FX PASA, intends to onboard local youth to platforms where they are able to invest their money in profitable ventures.
Sense. Does it make sense? If I that piece of land, when
I've learned is the ways to exercise on how to manage my money, how to account for my money, how to go on whatever I'm doing, on my salaries, how to manage it, on my earnings, and then the necessity of having a side hustle, which initially it wasn't my thing. I always knew my salary is good and maybe I'll manage that, but I've learned that there's a way I can do both a business and be employed at the same time.
Taking everything for granted, we are ignorant, so we need to leave ignorance, and that's what I can tell my fellow youth.
One of the gaps we have identified, most Kenyans don't have their finances right. A lot of youths are caught up in debt. We have these mobile app loans where they are borrowing and able to pay. So we want to help them understand their finances, how they can recover and pay those debts, and then begin to invest in themselves, and also start to build wealth over time. So the other gap we have seen, especially in Mombasa, there's a lot of economic challenges around here. One of them was as a result of COVID, having to depend on tourism, which is quite seasonal. People have had periods where they made money and other periods where there is no business. So we are offering an alternative way of investing where you can have consistent income by investing in the global financial markets. So
Kenya being one of the largest by market capitalization, speaking about the Nairobi Stock Exchange, that shows our clients that we are actually regulated by a recognized entity here in Kenya. Coming to the scam issue is a lot of individuals tend to just venture into trading as a sort of, with that mentality of gambling. They try to relate trading with gambling, and that's how they get scammed. Because you find a lot of individuals who tend to advertise themselves, or these companies that they offer trading platforms, they actually don't offer trading platforms. What they do is they offer platforms for people to trade based on market prices that they do create those market prices.
So increases, yeah? He had bought one apartment at 17 million. Guess how much was being offered?
It is Monday, and the market has taken what? Around 2 hours, 25 minutes of trading. I won't take you to exactly how it looks, but there were pointers that we're looking at last week in as far as that particular point in terms of how they traded last week, yes. So let's pick from what was our biggest gainers last week. And indeed, we don't have some surprise packages on our biggest gainers. Let me start with Portland Cement. On that, you can see they've gained 10%. That gives you 7.48. In fact, you can grab that here now at 7 shillings and 48 cents. Still so low from where they used to be, because if you look at the counters that really do not shout so much in terms of the way that they are, then it's Portland, and maybe investors are reacting to the news recently of them sort of settling those quarters in their Athi property, that's 798-acre property. Then every now from 20-something cents last week to 78 cents, almost touching a shilling. By the way, I'm talking about this because you might consider this an energy quarter, and we've seen majority of the energy quarters really bounce last week. So this is a 9.86% increase, giving you 78 cents. That's a That's how they opened this morning. NCBA, remember last week we laughed at how NCBA was back to 30 shillings. Now they're back to that again, 9.27% increase. This morning they opened at 33 shillings. That is exactly where they should be. Then Kapchorwati is back with it again at 13 shillings, so that representing 9.18% change really when you look at that particular counter as well. I'll be telling you why NCBA is among the biggest gainers. Let's move on to the biggest losers in as far as the markets opened this morning. Liberty comes in with a negative 10% change. That's huge again, because we're talking about 6 shillings a share now and 30 cents. By the way, Liberty has not been in the positive for quite some time. You might actually try and call them hot cold. NSC at 7 shillings, and I'll be telling you why that is a surprise as well, representing 6.67% change. And Jubilee also coming in at 245, and then we do have Total closing in at 23 shillings and 50 cents as well, representing negative 2.08%. But here you can talk about Liberty and NSC, and I'll be telling you why that is not so much of news, because we do have now the big list for the biggest movers last week in terms of how the trading was. And I will tell you, there's a competition really here when you put this together in this list for the biggest movers, because Safaricom now closed last week at 13,487,700. That's huge. And if you remember, by the way, NCBA at around 9:30 thereof, sorry, not 9:30, but 11:30 thereof, they're already closed this 12 million mark that we're talking about here, because indeed this morning they're starting at 12 million shares, 203,800. That's huge as well. But if you look at this, equity at 3 million, and then you have NSC, a big surprise as well. And when you see NSC trade at this, then you will say things might be looking upwards for our local market, because NSC, by the way, is an active counter as well. So most of the times when you see NSC, then they draw in majority of these volumes, then you will see indeed that there was a lot of liquidity in the market. That's why NSC was attracting this, because when majority of the counters at the NSC are doing good, then indeed you would like to see that NSC will also look northwards, and that's what we're saying this. Now, KPLC, yes, that sort of trading that we've seen at KPLC for the past 2 weeks is already dying down, because we're talking about 687,000 flat traded. Remember, KPLC has been touching the 1 million plus mark. In fact, last week, but one, we did see them touch 9 million, but now you can see it's now back to the old KPLC, but we're only talking about 687,000 flat to be exact. That's how they look, that's how they opened this morning, and it will be interesting to really see how today's markets close as well. Fantastic. So we take a short break. Once we come back, Ian Kitani will be with the chairman at Nairobi branch. We're talking about the ASK show, so we can talk about what we expect. Remember, it runs all the way from 26th today, all the way to the 2nd of October. That is into next month. So you don't have time then to go in and see exactly where we are as a county, as a country, in as much as agriculture is concerned. Let me just give you exactly what the rest of them are going to look like. Nakuru is going to start on 29th to 3rd. Kisumu to be announced. The Central Kenya National Show is going to start on 7th to 11th. Now what we do in Mombasa, 2nd to 6th November in Mombasa. We take a short break. It got recorded.
Yippee! Kamata floating at 349K. Oh yes, for only 349,000 Kenyan shillings, you become a plot owner at the Great Oasis Gardens, Nanyuki. The Great Oasis Gardens, Nanyuki is located along the Nanyuki-Rumuruti Road, only 11 minutes from the Cedar Mall and right opposite Mount Kenya Wildlife Estate. This is the best place to establish the getaway home that you have always dreamt about. For every 349,000 that you deposit or pay as installment towards the any of Optiven's plot of land, you get 10k cash back instantly. Jaza basi twende Nanyuki. Bigger is indeed better.
Hii ndio inaitwa randa. Unakumbuka mwimbaji alisema nipige randa
Nimelelewa kwa ile hali ya hustle. Celebrity yule tumefanyia kazi kubwa ni Nyashinski. Nashukuru ni hapa kazi tu.
As human beings, we don't embrace change. So what we do is we want to get stuck where we are.
We need to shift our thinking and our perspective around the issues of failure.
You don't have 96 years, but you don't need 96 years to go back to school.
Okay. When I think about Destiny Helpers, when I'm like, who's adding, there you're saying, who's adding value to my life, or who's helping me get to a better place?
To handle yourself is part of it, and even being able to handle failure is a success in itself.
There are people who like, you go ask.
They never share knowledge.
They tell you what you already know.
A true friend is one who tells you when your face is dirty.
It's amazing where I am today, and who would have thought?
Since I met you, I've added more white hair.
Yes, clearly.
Mimi nilikuwa nimehubiri miaka kadhaa kabla nikutane na mhubiri ambaye anaambia pepo toka na inaongea inasema tumeenda. Nimeingia mahali, nimetembelea watu ambao wamejaribu kuuza vitu zikakataa kuenda. Nikaingia pale nikasema maneno, nikamwaga mafuta mahali pale, zile bidhaa zikaanza kuuzika, maana zilikuwa zimefugwa na powers.
Who answers all of our prayers?
Vera Beauty and Fashion College is focused on being the leading technical and vocational training institute in the region. Our team possesses in-depth knowledge and extensive experience in the industry, offering thorough training in cosmetology, hairdressing, interior design, creative arts, training of trainers, nail technology, and fashion design. With branches in Nairobi, Thika, Meru, Eldoret, and now in Mombasa, our courses ensure that learners are completely equipped with knowledge, competency, and employability skills. Enroll today to be a part of a center of excellence.
Now, I know that we had promised to take you live to the ASK show with Ian Kitani, but then we do understand that things happen. You know, that's live TV. You put everything together last minute. Well, you can't go live. But guess what? We are going to give you that show. That's a promise, because Ian Kitani is right there at the ASK showgrounds, so we can actually see how the Nairobi International Trade Fair edition is going to go down. Good. But since we are here, let's take you back to a conversation that we've had here on our Lookupbusiness on intellectual property. I think you'll enjoy that. All right, let's get into it. And this is, by the way, this is not my research, because I want to prove to you exactly what it says. Any site that you go through, it will tell you that IP, that is intellectual property, is one of the most important assets of any business, and for individuals as well. Because it says, in some cases, you're even able to make money out of your IP. That's it. So let's talk about that money then. Talk about what IP is as well. All right, in the studio, we are joined by the Principal Franchise and Licensing Institute, Ogwang Omuga. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing better.
Happy to see you. It's been a minute.
It's been more than a minute.
But it's been
it's been like ages.
Guess what? You're not changing. You're just the same.
It's the glory of God.
Yeah, that's it. I want to say that's a compliment. Yeah?
God is faithful.
So our topic today, by the way, is that I told people that I'm going to tell you how you can make money out of intellectual property. Yeah. And somebody says, what is intellectual property? Can I have intellectual property? Must I be in business for me to have intellectual? Must I invent for me to have intellectual property? So let's begin from that then. What is intellectual property, Ogwangomoga?
Intellectual property, actually it's a compound word.
Yes.
And intellectual property is made up of two words, intellectual and property. So when you bring those two words together, intellectual property is a unique form of property that originates from someone's mind. Okay. So that is on the face value. So the question of Mr. Ogwang, do I have intellectual property? There is only one qualification that will enable an individual to say, I have intellectual property. And this is the qualification. Do you have a head? If you can say that, yes, Mr. Ogwang, I have a head, then whether you're aware of it or not, that head is working. As long as you're someone of a sound mind, that head is working. So intellectual property is anything that can come from someone's mind that that person should commercialize. So what can come from someone's mind? A lyric can come from someone's mind.
Yes.
Melody can come from someone's mind. Designs, drawings, the possibilities are endless. So if someone can come with something from their mind, it is that person's duty to convert that into intellectual property. Mm-hmm. If you have a recipe, it is your duty to convert your recipe into intellectual property.
Yes.
Because that recipe can actually grow for you an entire empire out there. There are people in the marketplace, who have created empires singularly from their recipes. So intellectual property, in short, is anything that an individual can create from their mind.
And that's it.
That's it.
Pretty much. So let's then come back. Before we then start to ask ourselves what types of intellectual property are there, let's dial it back.
Okay.
Somebody asked, must I be in business for me to start thinking that I can own intellectual property? Must I be a creator myself for me to say, well, this is my intellectual property? When you think about intellectual property, from which perspective do you want to start thinking about it?
Simba, it's from the perspective of, do you have a head?
And that's that.
And is your head sound? It's that simple. Because whenever we try to make it bigger and huge, then we seclude that conversation and we make it a very explicit and a very limiting conversation.
Yes.
Every person has something called thoughts. Thoughts is not a preserve of the few. So the question is, what are you thinking? There is a lady who converted a story about a wizard boy into an empire. How many wizards and witches do we have in Kenya? How many industry could we have developed from, and I mean this on a light note, how many industries could we have developed from the Kisi sector?
That's it.
Right?
Yeah.
So anything that someone is doing, are you a sportsman? How did one person convert their winning celebration into their intellectual property? What could have Ezekiel Keboi done by merely dancing? A person converted his phrase, are you ready to rumble, to a company that is worth 400 million US dollars.
By the way.
What could have Leonard Mambo Mbotela done if Leonard Mambo had known J, who ni ungwana, was his intellectual property? So creativity happens at different layers of the society. The only thing that people need to understand, anything that comes from your mind, that is the beginning of creativity. So you don't need to be a musician in order for you to create.
Yes.
You don't need to be a rapper in order for you to create. You don't need to be an architect in order for you to create. The only qualification here, my friend Simba, is this. Do you have a head? Is that head sound? Then guess what? You are a candidate for intellectual property.
So direct question, so that we start to decipher then what intellectual property is really in simpler terms. And this is a direct one.
Okay.
Somebody said, Simba, I've seen a phrase that originated from Kenya in New York, and it was in a train station in New York. Katasimu, katasimu, tupo site.
Yes.
And it is a popular phrase we've seen in the country.
Yes.
And in one way or another, Ogwang, I do not think that that gentleman right there realized that whatever he was doing at that particular point, that was intellectual property in a way.
Yes.
You say now, it's in New York, and I do not think he's making money out of that particular phrase.
No, it's not.
So let's begin it like that. What should have this gentleman done if he had this ability then to say, wow, this is my intellectual property?
Yes. The gentleman, the only thing you need to do as an individual is to be aware of what you have created.
Yes.
A parent, the first point of being a parent is to be aware that you are expecting to deliver.
Yes.
So in intellectual property, similarly, the moment that phrase took up its own life, the gentleman ought to have owned it that very moment. Every person, particularly in Nairobi, you walk, you come across 10 people, you ask, hey, who here has a degree? 9 out of 10 people will lift up their hands. No one ever goes back to say that that academic project you did was your intellectual property. So intellectual property begins from a point of awareness. If I am cooking, what is unique about my recipe? If I am a designer, what is unique about my recipe? This thing is intellectual property. This table is intellectual property. The design of this table should actually have an entire marketplace full of this table. But you'll understand, the design of this table probably is not even aware of the model on this table that that person can commercialize. So intellectual property, Simba, is with everyone. The only thing that denies us from taking advantage of our intellectual property is a simple phrase: awareness. Conversations every day. In school, we used to have a guy who would call someone a name and the name would stick. Do you know organizations by phrases? Do you know countries by phrases? Do you know products by phrases? So any person who has something that comes to them effortlessly, whether from a point of a talent or from the point of interest, hobby, this is your pastime.
Or chance.
It is your duty to convert it into an economy. And I'll tell you what, in 1981, there's a band that sang a song, Jambo, Jambo Bwana, habari gani, mzuri sana, right? Since 1980, all the way, when Wazungu come to Kenya, they say, Kenya kuna matata. They actually think that's a greeting. It's a form of greeting. The band that sang that song, Jambo, is the Mushrooms. What is it that Disney identified in Hakuna Matata and Disney said that was intellectual property? So intellectual property is in awareness. Are you aware of that unique thing that you have brought to the marketplace? Are you aware of how your mind, your brain expresses itself? Are you aware of your skill set? Are you aware of your knowledge, your idea? Are you aware of your surroundings?
Yes.
If today I was to say that I'm a Kung Fu master from somewhere called Kwon Lieta, right? And I'm telling you I am Master Kwon Nindomitna, right? You'll be like, you guys, you're a joke. because there is no validation of Kuonlieta in my village, right? But if someone comes and tells you, I'm Master Guangzhou from Zhuangha, then that one validates his credibility. So intellectual property, let me just mention this. At any given time, whether someone is tall or short, whether someone is plump or slender, whether someone is attractive or ugly, at any given time, an individual has 3 layers of intellectual property. There is intellectual property on how you look. Simba, the way an individual looks, you can create a market entirely out of that. There are organizations that will just be interested on your teeth and your dental structure, right? Every other person in this space has a unique feature. What all of us need to understand is, am I aware of my unique features? There's actually a gentleman in Kenya today who has a lot of advertising business. One day I come to ask myself, what is so unique about this guy? I noticed his eyes are not at the same level. One of his eyes is slightly tilted. And that is his intellectual property. So at any given moment, an individual has 3 layers of intellectual property. There is intellectual property on you and how you look.
Yes.
There is intellectual property in the things you do and how you do them.
Yes.
Then there is intellectual property in your immediate environment. Yes, Simba.
Pretty much. So now that we understand that, the other question that I normally face a lot under intellectual property, even when you see people quite talented in the things that they do without even being aware, is the marketplace for intellectual property.
Amazing.
Fine. I know now that I've got this spectacular thing about me. I've identified my intellectual property through all those levels. Then somebody says, how do I start to commercialize IP? And I want to ask you that question from this perspective. Is it a new thing for many people, especially in the Kenyan economy? Or intellectual property is just this black sea that nobody knows nothing about?
Intellectual property has been with us since the Garden of Eden.
Yes.
Because it's at the Garden of Eden that Adam was told to name everything. So intellectual property begins from the point of whatsoever you name.
Yes.
Katasim tuposite. What is that? It's a phrase. The gentleman who came up with katasim tuposite did not direct that phrase into an objective outlet. Today, Katasim would be earning this gentleman ridiculous money.
Everybody is using it across the board.
Everyone is using it.
Even politicians are using it across the board.
Everyone is using it.
Yes.
The other one was, Ndani.
Yes.
That was intellectual property. The other day, during electioneering period, Nick Salat came up with another phrase, depict. Depict. That's intellectual property.
Yeah.
So the first point of having
by the way, even
consumption...
Ricky G, if you...
Yes.
But there's a question on that, and I'm going to ask you that as well. Yes.
So the first point of consumption is this, is their value in that. Why is it that everyone all over the globe now has that katasim tuposite? Is there a value out of that? So then that tells you that in the marketplace, value is created at 2 levels. There is a level of value that is perceived value.
Yes.
If I say katasim tuposite, people will think, guy, man, you're up to date, you're cool. Eh? So then that one creates a product for the preserve. Hey, boss, you're cool. It's just that simple. Because the person who came up with, and I wouldn't want to mention names, right? But the people who came up with what we consume today, the person who perfected incandescent light, the guy did not go to school. The people who perfected the principles of aerodynamics, those 2 boys did not go to school. So intellectual property helps an individual to begin to define value. At the marketplace, transaction happens singularly on what people conceive as value, what people perceive as value.
Yes.
So whatsoever you've created, whether it's a painting, I interact with a lot of artists. And there's a gentleman called Vincent van Gogh. Vincent van Gogh did a painting early in his life. He's dead for I think the last 100 years.
Yes.
One of his paintings goes for $150 million. Because Vincent van Gogh's painting is not just painting. Vincent van Gogh's painting has marks of value. So the first point, whether in academia, whether in talent, whether in creativity, whether in your hobby, whether in a skill set that someone has. And there is no day you will ever tell me that someone came to this planet empty. No one came to this planet empty. Every one of us, we have something that we can convert and we can grow a market around it. So where does transaction happen? Transaction happens when someone is aware of what they have created and how they can define value in that thing that they have created.
Pretty much. It's a direct question as well then, that is going to be sort of like a guideline to them. You're speaking to somebody right now, but like, by the way, I've got this thing that I think I might want to consider as IP. Fine. I was watching an interview in one of these media stations across the country. I think it was NTV. They did get the lady who gave the current deputy president the nickname Riggy G.
Yes.
In fact, she said, well, I was the first person to come up with that word, by the way. This word that is getting thrown around right now. I'm the one who came up with it. Watch that interview. I won't go into the basics of the interview. The interview essentially ended on the first question. But anyway. but anyway.
Okay.
Once you have it, then what are the steps that I should take then to protect my IP so that I could lay claim to it as I start the steps of commercializing?
Okay, let me ask. What is Riggy G? Riggy G is a name. Any idiot with a mouth can come up with Riggy G. It does not take any, you don't need any peculiarity to come up with Riggy G.
Yes.
Where people miss it is that people did not attach a point of convergence with Riggy G. What that means, the lady needed to attach anything around Riggy G.
I see.
Can you come up with a caricature of sort around Riggy G? Can you come up with a sound of sort? So that sound becomes your point of transaction. That caricature becomes your point of transaction. That is where everyone misses it. Do you know Vision 2030 came from someone's master's degree? Every person with a master's degree today can actually license a component of their master's degree project to a county or to a state ministry.
Yes.
Where people lack awareness is to attach point of relevance with what you've created.
Yes.
Right? So if today I do, right? At that very instance, that is a scale in music. But you'll not come and tell me that is the Phrygian scale or that is the Mixolydian scale. No, you're not going to do that. Because you'll simplify it and tell me, isn't that company, right? That is how intellectual property happens. If someone introduces themselves like, hi, my name is Ogwang Omuga, right? And if I was to reverse that and say, hi, my name is Bond, James Bond. Do you know James Bond was very deliberate to convert a template around that greeting, and they licensed that form of greeting to Harvard? How many opportunities do we have in Kenya? How many movies have come through Kenya that the people who created these movies were not even aware of what they were putting out?
You actually even licensed that?
Yes.
Even
Shakespeare has literally put to place a third of UK culture, Shakespeare, from his work. So intellectual property must be from a point of what we can attach relevance to. In Kenya today, when I was born, I was not given that jab.
Yes.
I don't have it.
You know, that could have implications.
I don't have it.
You started saying that you look good, you might wake up tomorrow with things.
No, I'm saying I don't have that jab.
Oh, yeah.
Because in our culture, when a child was born, our great-great-grandparents were not twisted, they were not deformed. No, they were not. So what were they using? So there is a huge part of our indigenous culture that is actually lying dormant. Today, the most sought after medical technology on earth is acupuncture. Do you know any hospital, any facility that uses it, pays China because that is their culture? So intellectual property is amorphous. Everyone has it. In every other place, there is intellectual property. So the only what we are missing is this. If we can attach Riggy G, if that lady had just an image, if that lady just had a caricature, that lady could license that image to people who develop content, and the lady would earn from her house Now the most she can do is to appear on a TV interview and have nothing to show for it.
Although I wish we had more time, because I would have asked you, how do you conduct that interview? So how did you come up there? Anyway, here's the thing, though.
Yes, yes, sir.
Let's talk about your institute now.
Yes.
Because then I think IP, and commercializing IP, is one thing that people need to understand. Just to get that awareness then of how to start, knowing that indeed you're working money. Should I come to the institute? What am I learning, and what are you taking me through? How long is that gonna take me?
Our main interest is to grow something we call awareness.
Yes.
And intellectual property is conspicuously lacking in the African marketplace. Whether you look at government, you will be shocked. All our emblems are free. Our melody, our national anthem is free.
You're saying that the national anthem is free?
Is free.
Can you imagine?
I'm telling you the truth.
Came out the other day.
I'm telling you the truth.
You could actually go right now and claim it.
I'm telling you the truth.
And I ask the government to give you money. You will say it's mine.
Let me tell you, no sports team is taking advantage of the intellectual property. Not Gore, not AFC. AFC in intellectual property is at the same equivalent with Manchester. They have no clue the money they can generate in perpetuity. So what we do with our institution is this. We build intellectual property awareness at individual and corporate levels. Our main importance, our main interest, you will be shocked, Simba. Even media stations in Kenya, no TV station is aware of their intellectual property. No bank in Kenya is aware of the intellectual property. The closest space that is aware of intellectual property is pharmaceuticals. And they're only aware of their intellectual property on the basis of it being adversarial. They protect it, right? So if we are going to change where we are going as a people, if we are going to actualize Vision 2030, if we are going to meet the Big Four agenda and Ruto's agenda, then we need to ask ourselves, can we begin to explore pockets of alternatives, viable alternatives whereby our people can now concentrate on? In Europe, Simba, 97% of the economy is intellectual property. If you ever ask someone who we can say they went to school in Kenya, ask them, hey, what's the backbone of our economy? That idiot will tell you agriculture backbone of our economy. An idiot is not an insult.
It's not. I know that. I know that.
Idiot is not an insult. So, Safaricom through M-Pesa shifts, money shifting hands is 12 trillion, 4 times our GDP. So in our time, our factor of production is ideas. So any person, if you ever go back to your house in the evening and you don't have an idea, just know you have wasted that day. The thing that all of us should accumulate on a daily basis, whether someone is employed, whether someone is, you're divorced, you're going through a breakup, whether someone is wherever you are, if you go to your house in the evening without an idea, you should not even allow your head to hit your pillow. Because ideas are the seeds from where civilization germinates. This thing was at some point in someone's idea. The person who came up with this thing does not even know what they brought out. This thing can actually build an empire for this person who came up with this design. So at the institution, our interest is one. We want to build intellectual property awareness so we can grow our competitive advantage in the global market space.
Guess what? I'm not going to say that you face some transport issues when you're coming here, because I wish we had more time. Okay, now the other question is, how many classes then do I need to attend at your institute for me to go through the entire process, come out there knowing that very well now I am ready to face the market?
Intellectual property is everything. There is intellectual for people in media. There's intellectual for people in banking. There's intellectual property for people in insurance. There's intellectual property for people in music. So intellectual property is not a one fix all. That is why constantly we have events, and our events are geared around building capacity. I will not sit here and tell you, now Simba, intellectual property is copyright, intellectual property is trademarked. That is shallow.
And all that.
And that's what I always tell people.
Yes.
Whenever I meet people, people tell me, bro, see intellectual property patent. I tell them, leave that garbage you've read from Google and come get taught to identify what really intellectual property is. If someone comes and asks you, who is a lady? And you say, a lady has hips, a lady has... No, those are features of a lady. A lady can be a lady without hips. The same way you can actually have intellectual property without copyright. All these are features of intellectual property.
Yes.
So it's a conversation that we are having. We have an event on the 8th of October called Sink or Swim, particularly for people who are at the marketplace, so that you can come and get learning on how you can deliberately guide your career on intellectual property principles. So it's not a one-stop, it's not a one-size-fits-all conversation. It's a conversation that we're going to have until Jesus returns.
Sink or swim. That is
Sink or swim.
Sink or swim, especially for guys who are in
entrepreneurship or someone in career.
Yes, and guys who want to train, how can they do it?
You join. I will share with you. I will share with you the credentials, and then you can, at your own pleasure, just. But we have an event on the 8th of October.
Yes,
it's life transforming.
That's how it's going to be. I mean, if I say anything extra, I think I'll be taking the juice out of it. So hopefully now you do understand why intellectual property, and according to Guang, it is what is driving modern economy. So I believe it that our national anthem it's not even our property. By the way, Hakuna Matata, if you realize the other day when Kenyans started shouting, like, wait, that's our phrase. It's not even our phrase. Somebody's phrase somewhere will just slapped on it and say, well, I do not understand what it is. So Disney came for it, and rightfully so, because they realized nobody had it, isn't it? So it's okay to own it. Same way today you can own the national anthem and then make the government pay you a lot of money out of it. Make sure you actually tune into that particular one. That's 8th of October. Sink or swim. For all those guys in business, and if you have a career, it's either you sink or swim. Intellectual property. Thank you very much for coming.
Pleasure,
we guess what? We didn't have more time on it.
Wish
we had. Maybe what, 20, 15 more minutes on it, so we could look at other questions as well. But guess what? Take him online to the time that he walked into the studio at Lookuptv across all your social media platforms. I know I've seen those questions are coming in. Guess what? I'm going to forward them to him after this. If you want to join into that particular event on the 8th of October, I'll be giving you the link as well. All right, I'll see you Monday for another episode. My name is Simba Charles Kiage. Have a lovely one. Hopefully, a profitable one as well.
Hii ndio inaitwa randa. Unakumbuka mwimbaji alisema nipige randa
Nimelelewa kwa ile hali ya